I'd really like to get your views on the most pressing global issue at the moment. That's obviously Russia and the Ukraine. It's clear that Putin has aspirations to annex the Ukraine in some form or another. It seems like a throwback to 19th and 20th century attempts by empires to reclaim historical territories. What do you think is Putin's game? Why is the Ukraine such an important prize? And we're plainly in very real danger, if we're not already in a Cold War, of being in one, possibly a hot war in coming weeks if this is mishandled. I know that's a big issue, but I'd love your feeling, your insights.
Well, I think Putin feels that the post-Cold War era didn't work out for Russia the way that he had envisioned it. And by that, he means that he does not have the wherewithal to be on the same stage as superpowers like the United States and China. And he thinks he could be, should he reclaim most or much of the 100 million people he lost in population when the Soviet Union evaporated, and the 30% of the territory. And when he looks at the map, he sees Ukraine. It's rich in natural gas. It has precious metals. It's got Europe's most fertile farmland. And he thinks that this is central to these irredentist plans to reclaim, as you said, this sort of Russian empire. And how that goes about, he looks at Georgia, or he looks at eastern Ukraine or Crimea, and the degree to which he acts immediately is predicated on the status in the West. And the status in the West, and that includes Japan and Australia, South Korea, as well as the EU, NATO, and the United States and Canada, it depends on whether the world price of oil is high and he's rich in petrodollars and we're paying out the nose for energy that we can't or won't produce ourselves. It depends on whether NATO is at each other's throats or they're following the German lead of not meeting their defense obligations to spend 2% of their budgets on military readiness, or Germany is conducting something like this Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And also the American president. If the American president is begging Putin to pump more oil when he won't, or when he's asking him to lay off 16 entities when the Russian hackers are disrupting a pipeline in America, as they did in January, but he's begging him not to stop, or forcing him not to stop, but just divert a little bit his attention to other entities. When you have that situation falling in Afghanistan, then he feels opportunistic, and he feels the West either can't or it's spent or won't defend its own interests, so I'm going to go into Ukraine. I think what, in this particular instance, what's fooled him is that he didn't count on the response because of these things I talked about, but it was so embarrassing to NATO and the United States and the West that he so flagrantly went in to kill people and wreck that country. He didn't use the full force, the full wherewithal that was at his disposal. For the first 4 or 5 days, he's been shocked. He's been shocked at the Ukrainian resistance. He's been shocked that NATO is now talking more like Winston Churchill than Neville Chamberlain. The German chancellor gave a stunning speech that he basically repudiated everything that Germany has stood for 30 years. You know, we're going to produce energy, fossil fuels, no Nord Stream pipeline. We're going to rearm. We're going to have 2%. We're going to meet the 2%. Everybody should. And it was no green anti-American boilerplate. I wish our own president would emulate that speech. And so Putin now he's befuddled, he's confused, but it doesn't erase the point that he has the ability and the potential to crush Ukraine if he puts all of his resources there. And that's what he's going to be doing in the next week. And now it's just a race between a belated Western effort to send Javelin missiles, which, by the way, I think is the most effective weapon in the world now in terms of cost efficacy, 200,000 plus 80 for the charge, or the bullet, so to speak, and then you can take out a tank at 2.5 miles with, fire and forget. So it's a very valuable but expensive commodity, and we have not given them enough. Donald Trump reversed the Obama decision not to give them that, but we still haven't given them enough. And I don't know why the West didn't pour it in November and December and January, because when you see those columns, John, of 40 miles of Russian materiel on trucks and tanks coming in to destroy Kiev, you would think they would be easy targets, but not easy targets if you don't have enough anti-tank weapons. And so now we're in a race to supply them. And that has finally brought a response from Vladimir Putin. He's a student of history, and he knows that no invasion can put down an insurrection unless the borders are closed. We had trouble in Iraq because of Syria and Iran supplies. We had trouble in Afghanistan because of the Pakistan open border. We had problems going back to Vietnam and Korea with China, Afghanistan as well with the Pakistan border, but also in the case of Vietnam with Southeast Asia and the Ho Chi Minh Trail, as you remember from the Australian contribution. So he's looking now and he says, I can destroy this independent country and absorb it, but not if NATO wakes up and they use their 4 corridors of, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and pour these weapons in that can nullify my advantage. So now he's threatening the use of nuclear weapons. Vaguely, but not ambiguously. So to NATO, and he doesn't, and he feels he won't be able to win. I think if he can't close the borders.